Welcome to Concept Being the podcast, where the intention is well, but let's be for real. Life gets a little chaotic, and so do we. And that's totally fine. It's fine. You're fine. I'm fine. We're literally fine. And we're all about finding the balance while staying honest with health, wellness, and all the juicy topics that matter. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Concept Being, where the intention is well. My name is Jade, and I'll be your host for today's episode. And today's episode is all about the concept of traditional Chinese medicine. And I'm so excited because we are joined by the wonderful Saher Hussaini Quinn, who is an expert in Chinese medicine. She has her master's degree in traditional Chinese medicine, and she's going to be taking on patients soon. So if you're listening to this episode and you're like, ooh, I need to reach out to Saher, go ahead and do that in a couple of months. But she's here to chat with us all about qi, balance, acupuncture, and all the traditional ways that traditional Chinese medicine can help us feel like we're not burnt out, over caffeinated wellness girlies. So welcome, Saher.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited. So typically we kick things off with a moment. You are the guest. Would you like to go first?
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. I think a moment of wellness today was that I woke up and I had a cup of bone broth to kickstart my digestion first thing.
Okay, I love that. I haven't tried bone broth, but I've heard really good things about it. Yes, and now that I'm not, update guys, I'm not vegan anymore. But now that I'm not vegan, now perhaps I might be open to exploring that. But I've heard so many good things about it.
It's actually the best way, I would say, to like tap into starting to eat meat again, just because it's going to expose you to the minerals, the collagen, and the vitamins, but it's not going to give you like the proteins that you have to break down and process.
Okay, that's good to know. And honestly, the collagen, that's really where I
Yeah.
want to be at. Like, that's the selling point for me. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Good to know that it's approved by you too. So that's good to know. I will share a wellness moment as well. Today, actually yesterday, I had to come to terms with myself. I'll be honest. I've been coming to terms with the person that I am. But usually I've been meditating for about like 10, 15 minutes. And that to me is like I'm in a rush. Like I'm like, oh, I only have 10, 15 minutes to meditate. I know I could be doing more. Like I know that I could sit in meditation a lot longer, but for some reason I've just been doing like 10, 15 minutes. And so last night I was like, you know what, Jade, you don't have anything, like you're not on a time crunch, like just sit in meditation a little bit longer. So today I sat in meditation for 30 minutes and it
Wow.
was really great. Yeah. Oh, I was re-listening to the podcast that I edited a couple of days ago. And she was saying this was about the concept of Reiki. And she mentioned that she would sit in meditation for like 45 minutes to an hour for like 9 months. And I was like,
Wow.
Jade, you can sit in meditation a little bit longer, like challenge yourself a little bit more. So that is my, like, I'm like, I don't know that I can do, actually, you know what? I think 30 minutes is, well, that's where we're at right now. And that's okay.
I think in today's day and age, to be able to hold consciousness for that long is so impressive. Like to be able
Thank you.
to like have that.
Yeah. And honestly, it was the sound bowls really helped me. I don't think I could just sit in silence. Like I was doing sound bowls and a lot of throat work. So yes, but it was great. And I popped out and I was like, you can do 30 minutes. So that was my wellness moment.
I
Thank
love
you.
that. That's very motivating. I'm going to try and like implement a little bit of a longer meditation.
Yes, I fully support it. And like you said, baby steps really help because there's no way that I can't just like jump into an hour. That'd be wild. Okay. So thank you for sharing your wellness moment with me. I appreciate it. Are we ready to talk about traditional Chinese medicine?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so let's start off with just give us a background. What is traditional Chinese medicine? How did you get into it? Give us a scoop.
Yes. Okay. So traditional Chinese medicine has been around for millennia at this point. It's essentially what the emperors of China and a lot of the royals of China used to use to essentially like elongate their life, make sure that their generations would continue to be passed down and keep the lineage strong. And so for me personally, I started off as a pre-med student in undergrad, And at the time, I knew that I wanted to help people. That's always been something I've been interested in. I grew up in like a household of doctors. And so medicine was kind of like one of the only things that I ever truly considered as a career path. Fast forward a few years post college, I have this adult onset cystic acne. I've never experienced anything like this before. It was all over my cheeks, all over my chin, my forehead, just horrible, painful, made me like plummet in my self worth, everything. And so I did what anybody would think to do, and I went to a doctor. They referred me to a dermatologist who then put me on a series of antibiotics. And at the time, I was desperate. I was willing to do anything. So I took antibiotics for about 6 to 7 months. And then I started having gastrointestinal issues. So I was referred to another doctor who then put me on a proton pump inhibitor, which essentially is a medication that reduces the acid of your stomach. But it's also something that over time kind of inhibits the functioning of your stomach. And so now I was dependent on these two medications. The antibiotics weren't really working for my skin. My skin hadn't changed, hadn't gotten any better. And now I had these gut and esophageal issues. And so at this point, I was fully desperate. I just like didn't know what to do. And one of my colleagues at the time, who is now one of my like, friends and great mentors in Chinese medicine, was in the program that I went to. And she was like, "Hey, Saher, I think you should try out traditional Chinese medicine." And I was like, you know what, at this point, I'm down for anything. I don't even know what could clear this. And I decided to go to her doctor here in the city in New York. And it was literally that first appointment that I felt so taken care of. There's just this complete intake that's so holistic, takes into account every single thing that could have gone on in your life to get to where you are at that point. And the acupuncture and the herbal formula that she gave me pretty much cleared the acne, got rid of my stomach ulcer and esophageal irritation. It was basically scar tissue that had like built up because of the acid reflux and everything. And so she got rid of it all within 2 to 3 months of treatment. And from then on, I was sold. So I literally was like, wait, this is the kind of medicine I want to do. This is where I feel like Western medicine kind of fails people in sort of like these chronic or less solvable type issues that are kind of deemed as like, deal with it. Eventually you'll get through it. And I kind of said no to that. And I'm happy that I ended up where I am. Yeah.
I'm glad you ended up where you are too,
Thank you.
because now you can answer all of my questions about traditional Chinese medicine.
Absolutely.
So you kind of touched on the difference between Western medicine, like, and traditional Chinese medicine, where traditional Chinese medicine took into you holistically, but can you kind of go deeper into the differences between traditional Chinese medicine and Western medicine?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest misconception is that they are polar opposites. And I think that is like actually far from the truth. So both are considered allopathic forms of medicine, meaning that you treat with the opposite. So, for example, if you have, let's say, like I did, a acid reflux issue where I had an overproduction of acid in my stomach, I was given something to reduce the acid. Same thing with Chinese medicine. When you're given an herbal formula, you're going to give something that kind of negates the action of what is already going on internally. So I think that's one of my favorite things to point out about them is that they're actually more similar than opposite. That being said, one of the beautiful things about Chinese medicine is that it's definitely more of a creative medicine. It's more of an art form. No one person is treated in the same way. So essentially, if you come in for asthma and I come in for asthma, my treatment would vary so differently from yours just based on your constitution, based on other internal symptoms that are kind of coinciding with the asthma itself. And that's kind of the beauty of Chinese medicine is that no treatment is going to be the exact same. There's no exact one formula for treating a person. And I think that's what allows it to be more of an individualized treatment itself and kind of provide better results because it is so personalized to the person.
Okay, you said a word, you said constitution.
Yeah,
What is a person's constitution?
that is a great question. Okay, so kind of to put it in basic terms, when you are in the womb, you kind of inherit two things. You inherit this pre-heaven essence or your jing from your parents. And so the sperm and the egg are kind of going to give you your foundation. And then as you are inside of the womb, you're also eating and being fed by the mother with the food that she eats, the air that she intakes, anything that she kind of brings into her body is being fed to you through the placenta. That's going to kind of create your post-heaven essence in Chinese medicine. So when you combine the two, you are born with what is known to be a constitution, which is basically the amalgamation of both the pre-heaven and post-heaven essence that create you to be you as you are. So if you're born with a weaker constitution, meaning that, let's say, for example, you have a parent who was taking a prescription medication that perhaps altered your immunity, or even it could be something like they didn't even know they were pregnant, so they had a couple of glasses of wine, and then early, very, very early in being a mother to be, it could impact the fetal cells so particularly, just because they're so small and so susceptible to sort of anything that goes on. So all of that could kind of impact your constitution. So that way, when you're born, it could mean that like you have weakened immunity, or you could be the opposite, and you could have a really strong constitution where you're one of those people that just doesn't get sick, but when you do get sick, it batters you down because it had to really fight your immune system to get in there. Does that
Okay.
kind of clear it up?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you for explaining that to me, because I was like,
Yeah.
wait, what is a constitution? Like the United States one? But whatever. Okay, thank you
Oh,
for explaining that.
yeah.
A couple of other things. So, qi. Can
Yes.
you explain qi to me? Because I know that's also inside of traditional Chinese medicine.
Yes. Okay. So in Chinese medicine, alongside your constitution, you're also born with the vital substances. So one of those we're very familiar with, it is our blood. Another that we're very familiar with is our mind, which is known as the Shen in Chinese medicine. And then I already talked a little bit about the constitution and the essence that we sort of inherit from our family and the food that we eat. So qi is essentially the energy on the verge of matter, matter on the verge of energy that allows your body to kind of function in harmony. It circulates with your blood. It's what gives your organs the power to be alive and to be able to keep you alive. It's what keeps your blood circulating. It's what keeps your mind going. It's your consciousness. It's essentially the foundation of everything. Anything that has life has chi.
So we all have qi. Like
Yes.
we just have a bunch of qi going through us. Okay. So we have qi, we have a constitution. How
Mhm.
does like yin and yang fit into this equation?
Yeah. Okay. So yin and yang are kind of seen as
Yang. Okay.
no worries. I feel like everybody says yang until they get into the world of Chinese medicine, and then they learn that it's actually yang. So I myself at one point definitely also said yang, just because if you don't know, you don't know.
Yes.
So basically, the two are sort of like a spectrum. So on one side of the spectrum is going to be yin, and the other side is going to be yang. And yang is going to represent more of the energetic, more like types of qualities that kind of symbolize like the sunlight, brightness, movement, very like yang energy is going to be like upwards, whereas yin is going to be the opposite. It's going to be more cooling, more down, like more downwards. It's going to be more like inwards. It's essentially the opposite of yang. And when you look at Chinese medicine, all of our treatments are basically comprised of bringing your body back to balance. So typically when you go to see a doctor, when you go for healthcare, there's something that you're wanting to work on, whether it's stress or even something like a physical ailment like myself. And so when you go into the doctor, the principles of yin and yang are sort of the theory that Chinese medicine is based on. And we're going to kind of use those principles to prescribe herbs that either give you more yang energy or sedate yang energy if you have too much of it. And same thing for yin. If you have excess yin, we're going to focus on building up your yang to kind of combat that excess and basically bring you back to a state of homeostasis, bring you back to harmony, keep you feeling good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So many questions, so many follow-up questions. Let me think. What do I want to ask? Okay. So you mentioned that there would be specific herbs and stuff that would be recommended. So
Yeah.
are there go-to herbs in traditional Chinese medicine? Should we be using herbs? Like, what's the vibes? Should I put
Okay.
it into my morning routine? That's the question. Should
I
I put
love that
any of these
question.
into the morning routine?
No, I love that question. Okay, so the answer is it depends. And I know that is so vague, but one of the beautiful things about Chinese medicine that I think we kind of don't have here in the Western world is this idea that like one herb is going to be like a fix all. And so in Chinese medicine, you basically are given a formula. You're never really given like one single herb to take. So, we're going to be giving you a formula that balances out the actions of every single herb. So, if I give you like a particularly warming herb, I'm going to pair it with something that's a little bit cooling so that it doesn't create too much heat inside the body. And so, depending on what your needs are, there could be a couple of herbs that you could incorporate, I would say, into your cooking or into your teas. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend taking like one herb diligently over a long period of time because it's basically going to build up the property of that one herb in your body and kind of will offset the internal balance that you have. But that being said, let's say you have very, very dry skin. One of the easiest things that you could incorporate would be having goji berries, jujube red dates, and pear. If you boil that down into, like, let's say from 4 cups of water to 2 cups of water, drink that for a couple of days, and that will really help lubricate your insides and also reflect on your skin. That's just kind of one example of an herb, but I would say it is very different than Western medicine, where it's like, okay, this is like the magical herb, take this one and like keep doing it. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm understanding like it's about balance. Like don't just go completely one way and then just always take or always drink this specific tea every morning. Like it's just
Yeah.
kind of like find the balance. You have some and then you give it a break. That I think is so different from what I'm used to because I am a creature of habit. So I will put something into my wellness routine and keep it there. So this
I
is
mean,
good to know.
I feel like we all do that. And I think oftentimes like when people come to see us as Chinese medicine practitioners, like we learn people's patterns and we're like, "Hey, did you know that like what you are eating is actually contributing to what you have going on?" So maybe if we like shift that, we can kind of moderate and change the lifestyle to change how your body behaves. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a really beautiful way to look at medicine in general.
Yeah, I love that. I agree. It's very like poetic. Like find the
Yes.
balance. How do we know if we're off balance?
Ooh, okay. So that I feel like we know instinctively. It's kind of like when you have insomnia. You wake up in the middle of the night, you know something is off. You have a lot of stress. You might be able to pinpoint the cause of that stress. It could be work or it could be something familial, personal, but we are able to kind of pinpoint things that are sort of like getting us out of our like sympathetic or parasympathetic state, like putting us into more of like a fight or flight or putting us in a place where we feel discomfort. And I think that's kind of when we ultimately know that there's not balance. Now, on the opposite end, there are also people who I think are not as in touch with themselves. And one of the beautiful things about Chinese medicine, too, is that when you start seeing an acupuncturist or if you go to a Chinese medicine herbalist, they start to help you recognize patterns of imbalance within yourself. So, even if you're not that in touch with what it means to be out of balance, you will learn just simply based on the questions that we ask. Like, for example, one of the most common things that's talked about in Chinese medicine are going to be periods for anybody that menstruates. Your period is kind of a monthly report card, it gives us so much insight into what's going on inside the body, or your daily bowel movements. So, like, telling us whether or not you go daily tells us a lot about what either your norm is or what needs to shift, or telling us like the consistency, the frequency, does it hurt? All of that is going to give us so much information that also will in turn teach you to be more in touch with like, wait, okay, I noticed that I ate this super spicy hot food yesterday. Today I was constipated. Maybe I should combat that with something cooling so that it kind of moves through my body better. That kind of stuff.
Good to know. Okay,
Yeah.
so look out for periods, look out for bowel movements. Is there anything else that we should like if I am like, is something off? Is there anything else that I can check in on myself using traditional Chinese medicine methods?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say another really great, you know, easy way to check in with yourself is just going to be your general digestion. Are you getting a lot of bloating? Do you feel a lot of like sluggishness or fatigue after you eat? All of those are indicators into either imbalances that we have going on inside that stem from like an internal imbalance or something from we're eating. So one of the cool things about Chinese medicine is that it helps you essentially like figure out, is it an external factor that's causing the imbalance or is it something internal, and we kind of work to bring the harmony back to that. So digestion is a big one. I would say your mind. I think a lot of people think when you go to a doctor you're only going to focus on the physical, And Chinese medicine really takes into account your emotions and your mental health to kind of treat physical ailments as well. So if you have a lot of stress, or if you have a lot of grief, or if you have a lot of anger, all of those manifest in the body differently as well. And so those are really great places to check in and be like, okay, like I've been noticing I've been really, really angry lately and I have so much shoulder tension. Maybe you're furrowing your brows a lot. Maybe you get like a ton of headaches when you're angry, just because all of that yang energy is just like rising up. Anger is yang. It's very like loud, it's boisterous, it's up here. Whereas grief is going to be more of like a lung deficiency. So grief is an emotion that kind of manifests with respiratory illness or like asthma. Anything that kind of affects your lungs is going to manifest with grief.
In your last answer, you kind of mentioned that your acupuncturist would also be a person that would tell you if something's off balance. First
Yeah.
of all, what is acupuncture? I've never had acupuncture.
Okay.
But I know the theory. Like, I know there's needles that like you
Mm-hmm.
put. Are they needles or are they something
They are
else?
needles. Yes, they
Okay.
are needles. Wait, go ahead. I feel like you had more.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was going to say, what's acupuncture? How often should we begin to do, like, do I need to incorporate this into my lifestyle?
Okay, yeah. So I think the beauty of acupuncture too is that like you get to choose how often you want to implement it. So if you're going in for like a chronic ailment or something that's been really bothering you for a long time that you feel like Western medicine hasn't really addressed or been able to clear up for you, Chinese medicine is going to be really great, and it's going to be something that you would want to do, I would say, a minimum of like, let's say 6 to 9 treatments. And then from there, your practitioner could kind of help you reevaluate and take you forward on like a treatment plan. Or if you're going in because you've never had it before, you just want to know what it's like, I always tell my patients to kind of like really feel present in that moment, like feel all the sensations of the needles. I'll get back to the needles and how they work in a second.
Okay.
But basically like go into the space with like full present behavior and kind of absorb the effects. You'll notice that your body's going to feel a lot calmer, your mind is going to kind of come down and settle. Some people actually experience an outburst of emotion on the opposite end, so they get like very, very emotional, might start crying when the needle is inserted. It's a really beautiful experience for people who have never had the movement of qi and energy kind of explored in their body like that before. So going back to Chinese medicine and acupuncture, acupuncture is basically the form of one of the forms of treatment that's used. So it's these tiny, tiny little needles. They're actually thinner than strands of hair. I feel like a lot of people like freak out with the idea of like needles in their body.
Mm-hmm.
And I myself hate the feeling of getting a shot, like a vaccine, but acupuncture feels so, so different. A lot of times you may not even feel the needle go in because it's just that thin. And they're basically placed along points on your body that the practitioner will sort of like prescribe for you based on what's going on to bring you back to balance. And so one of the easiest ways I think that we can think about acupuncture from a Western lens is looking at it as if it's working on our central nervous system. It's basically kind of giving your body signals as to where to focus, where to release pain receptors, and where to kind of renegotiate the focus from the mind to the body.
One thing that I want to add, I don't know if anyone knows this, but like some of the insurances, they cover acupuncture
Yes.
now, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
which is
Absolutely.
great. I saw that and my friend was telling me about it. She's like, "Oh, I just got acupuncture. Did you know it was covered by insurance?" I was like, "No, I didn't know that." So, friendly tip, check your insurance
I
cuz
guess
I didn't
just
know
to
that.
hop on that too, no, like the reason why insurance is able to cover acupuncture is because in America, at least, traditional Chinese medicine is regulated by the American Medical Association. So there's actually a lot of, I would say, like law and just like regulation that's in place for the medicine to be practiced, which I feel like isn't always the case for a lot of like holistic approaches to healthcare. So it's kind of cool that we do have that that sort of stamp of approval, as silly as it sounds. Not that we would need it, but we do have that, and I think it just sort of legitimizes it a little bit more, especially to people who have never gone to anybody other than their primary care physician.
Yeah, I agree cuz I didn't know that and once I saw that I was like, "Wait, this is for real." So this is good
Mm-hmm.
to know. May I ask you, from your view in traditional Chinese medicine, are there any wellness trends that you're kind of like, I don't know if these really align with traditional Chinese medicine, like that's actually they lied to you. Like is there any of those that you're like, I need to disprove this right now.
Immediately, yes.
Okay.
It kind of makes me laugh because There's this really cool wellness place here in New York City, and they offer hot cold therapy. It's kind of like the new it place to go. I've had a lot of friends go, and they're like, Saher, you should come. Like, it would feel so good to do the ice plunge and the sauna. And I'm like, okay, so it's the ice. So, Chinese medicine really views cold as kind of a culprit for a lot of imbalances or things that manifest in the body, like pain, or we can have weakened digestion from just cold exposure. It also impacts your fertility and the womb and your period. So if you get a lot of like cramping, it's best to avoid ice and colder sensations, especially while you're on your period. So, with the topic of like ice baths, I would say that that is something that I tend to shy away from. And that's not to say that you shouldn't do it. I think that there is absolutely a time and a place, but I think the overindulgence of the hot cold therapy is kind of where I draw the line. I would say personally, and also from a Chinese medicine view, it's just sort of overexposing your body to too much cold. I would say if you really want to do the ice cold therapy or the ice plunge, which again, like I've done it before, it is not for me. I cannot handle it,
Hmm.
but I will try. Like every now and then I'll be like, okay, I'm going to give it a go. And then I'm like, nope, I regret every decision I have up until this point. I think there are people who definitely see it as something that like boosts their energy. And I think if it does work for you and your constitution, and you feel energized by it, I would say keep doing it, but maybe tone down the frequency of how often you're doing it.
Okay. I also did one. Well, actually I wouldn't call the other one a cold plunge. I just like
Mm-hmm.
jumped into a cold like river. But that was too much for me. Anyways, I did a cold plunge out here in
Mm-hmm.
Portugal, freezing. First of all, my feet are always like 2 degrees colder than the rest of my body. So when I was in there and I'm in there, you're trying to I tried to do like a minute and then like 2 minutes and stuff like that. It just felt like torture for no reason. Like I was like, why am I doing this to myself? Like life for me is not that serious. Like I get sometimes like you need the dopamine hit or whatever it's for. I can find another way. Anyways, so that's good to know though. So cold in traditional Chinese medicine, we're trying to avoid. So is it better to be hot then?
I wouldn't say hot, but I would say like warm.
Okay.
Kind of just like that neutral warmth feeling, or maybe even just like a little bit warm, like a heating pad is comfortable. But on the opposite end of that, too, like doing too much sauna can also be detrimental. For example, I had this one patient who I treated for a couple of years while I was in my graduate degree program, and they were coming in with the inability to sweat because they had been doing saunas and hot yoga repetitively for like 30 years. So their body lost its ability to sweat under normal conditions. And sweat is one of the ways that we rid our bodies of like toxins. It's how we self regulate. And so something that we worked on was like being able to sweat again. And so we really had to cut back on the sauna and the hot yoga use to be able to retrain the body how to naturally function when it's hot outside. Because when you put your body in sort of these unnatural places, it does kind of over time lose the ability to function in the way that it's used to, just because you're training it. You're training it that every day at like this time, we experience this tundra or we experience this like extreme heat wave, and we need to conserve our energy. So it's not going to like try and get rid of any extra energy because you're already using so much of it while trying to combat that situation that you've put yourself in, if that makes any sense.
That does make sense. And that's also really good to know as like someone who used to teach hot yoga that yeah. Speaking of yoga though, are there any exercises or movements that traditional Chinese medicine is like, yeah, go do that. That's good for you.
Yes. Okay. So I think from a traditional perspective, like the easiest answer here would be like Qigong and Tai Chi. So Qigong is more of a meditative type of Qi moving practice. You kind of might be familiar with seeing different populations of like elderly people outside kind of practicing it. It's kind of like that slow moving, like very meditative, poetic type of exercise. But all of that has specific intention to move chi along the meridians and through your body. So that's like one example. Or another, like I said, would be Tai Chi, which is the martial arts form of essentially moving chi throughout the body. It's a very, again, it's a very poetic form of martial arts, though, in that way, because everything, again, has this like very rooted intention. But now, also, let's say you're somebody who works 9 to 5, you work every day of the week, 40-hour work week, whatever. Maybe you don't have time to implement those, or maybe you're not necessarily interested in implementing those exact practices. Any form of movement is going to move chi. Any form of exercise is going to move chi. And I think one of the really cool things with Chinese medicine is that it is very integrative. So, in a lot of my classes, we had professors who taught at both medical school programs here in the US and have their master's, doctorate, or a licensure in acupuncture or traditional Chinese medicine. And they would bring in both when they would teach us. And so we would learn different breathing techniques, different physical therapy techniques that you can do to kind of combat anything you have going on. I think one of my easiest, one of the most like one of my favorite things to recommend to people, especially for stress, which I feel like we all deal with, is S breathing. Are you familiar with S breathing? I'm not sure.
No. Go
Okay.
into that.
Yeah, okay. So it's basically super simple. You basically lie on your back, feet on the ground, knees bent. So you're kind of in this like this position. If this
Are
was my
you
head,
shaped like an S? Is that what
you're
it?
shaped like an S, yes.
Okay.
But also, I it's really cool that you said that because I've never thought about it that way. Because
I thought that's where you were going with it. I was like, oh, that's so cute. Okay,
oh,
keep
but
going.
I love that. I'm going to start saying that to my patients. So, what you do is essentially you just put your hands on your lower abdomen, kind of right below your belly button. Focus on first inhaling just with your nose, like inhaling, taking big, deep breaths, and expanding your hands outwards. So, I think a lot of times when we breathe and we're really stressed, it's very shallow, it's coming from our chest. Whereas when you lie down, it forces diaphragmatic and belly breathing. And so you'll kind of start to feel your hands expand over your stomach and drop in as you exhale. Once you've kind of figured out what that feels like for you, breathing through your abdomen, breathing through your diaphragm, you then are going to focus on taking that big inhale, holding it for, let's start with like 4 to 5 seconds. So kind of counting in your head, not exhaling just yet. Once you get to 1, you exhale with the hissing sound. So it's basically a hissing
Okay.
sound. And when your hands are on your stomach, you basically feel it deflate very slowly. The goal here is to
I'm doing
a
it right
lot.
now.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely a lot easier when you're like lying down on your back, but this one, it does two things. It trains your diaphragm and your body how to breathe better and basically intake more oxygen. But secondarily, it's also kicking into your parasympathetic nervous system and it is telling your body to calm down. Whenever your exhale is longer than your inhale, it basically like triggers your vagus nerve to kind of come into play and brings you out of this like sort of stress induced state into more of a calm, present, grounded state. So I feel like if you wanted to add it onto your meditation, could be really cool. But this is also something that people can do any time of the day, which I love. And once you kind of figure out what it feels like when you're laying down, you can start to practice it when you sit up. It's just a lot harder, I think, for a lot of people to figure out what it means or how to like move their diaphragm and their abdominal muscles when they're breathing, just because it's not something we do quite often. I think if you're a singer, especially like opera singers, they're trained in that form of breathing, but it's something that like everyday people are just not accustomed to because we're up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was better to exhale longer than the inhale, like for the breathing exercise. I didn't know that. So that is news to me. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing that with me.
absolutely.
So I know that we chatted about the Constitution and everyone is different, but if you had to give maybe like your top, I don't know, top 5, top 3 traditional Chinese medicine, put this into your routine, it'll really help. What would it be?
Okay, I love that question. I think the first would be to start your morning with something warm. Breakfast is actually super important in Chinese medicine. It basically is what gives your body the fuel and the energy to kind of move throughout your day and essentially like allows your digestion to kickstart. So whether that is a warm bone broth like I did this morning, which by the way is not a meal replacement, it's just something to kickstart my digestion and then move on into like kind of a warmer breakfast. Those are basically going to help support your body, your metabolism, and also helps with your blood glucose and cortisol levels. So, all in all, it's kind of like a win win from a Chinese medicine and Western perspective. So, warmth for number one and warm breakfast.
Question. I have a
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Okay, I know you said something warm. Coffee. What are your thoughts on coffee?
I honestly am drinking it right now. Coffee is
Okay.
great. I would say don't, if you can, avoid drinking it on an empty stomach don't make it the first thing that you put into your body, because it's also caffeine is dehydrating and we really want to nourish our insides. We don't want to spike the acid in our stomach, and coffee is acidic. So it's kind of giving us all of those, I would say, negative impacts from a cup of coffee when you drink it alone. But if you have other things in your stomach to kind of offset the caffeine, offset the acid, it's just a lot better for you. I have a cup of coffee. I quite honestly never finish it. I feel like half a cup is all I need for me. But also alternating your caffeine sources, I think, is also something to kind of, if you're able to start practicing, just because it's a great way for your body not to become addicted to one form of caffeine and one dose of caffeine even.
Okay, that's a good tip. Okay, thank you for going on that side quest with me. Okay, you were giving us tips.
Yes. Okay, so warmth, breakfast, coffee, starting with a bone broth, something to kickstart your digestion is great. The second thing that I think I would take with you from Chinese medicine, this one's for menstruators. Wear socks or slippers when you're walking around on cold floors. So I think this one is something that a lot of South Asians and Asians kind of grow up doing naturally, because it's just something that you're taught. You know, you walk around the house barefoot, but typically you wear slippers or socks. But a lot of people don't, I think, recognize why that is. So in Chinese medicine, one of the points that is on the bottom of your feet is called kidney 1. And the kidney meridian runs up your leg and basically goes right through your uterus and your womb, essentially. And it kind of goes up the center of your body. And in that process, whenever you step on cold floors, you're again inviting cold into the body. So one of the ways that things can enter our body in Chinese medicine is through the skin. And so if you protect the soles of your feet with socks and slippers, it's basically going to kind of help you out when it comes to both like your period symptoms and fertility, and just sort of any abdominal discomfort in general. So that's kind of like a fun little lifestyle hack, I would say.
That one. I
Yeah.
like that one's actually I'm doing it right now. I would lift my no, it's fine. But I have both socks and like slippers on right now. So I check one. Okay.
Amazing. I love that. Um, okay, and then the last one I'm going to say is to move your chi daily. We know exercise is good for you, but I think when we think about it from a Chinese medicine term, it kind of puts it, I would say it like almost kind of gives it a little bit more of a tangible purpose, because you kind of feel the effects of it. So people say running releases endorphins, dancing releases endorphins. All of those are forms of moving chi. So if anything, what I would recommend is that I think sometimes when we're really overwhelmed with work, or we're really overwhelmed with just, you know, our day to day, whatever it could be, if you have like a really weird schedule where you're working night shifts, or anything that's sort of disruptive to the natural flow of how your body should be, or how you kind of feel like it should be living, implement just about 15 to 30 minutes of movement. It doesn't have to be a true form of exercise in the traditional sense, meaning that you go to the gym, you carve out that time. If that is draining for you, don't do that. Do something like a little dance party in your apartment, or have like a jumping jack fiasco, just something that kind of gets your body moving and moves that energy through your body, so that way nothing gets stuck. And that's kind of what moving chi is. It's just going to circulate. It's going to help release anything that's kind of trapped inside, whether it's anger, whether it's stress, whether it's frustration, whether it's sadness. Just releases the happy feel good hormones and kind of keeps things moving so that you can go about your life. And long term, it's great for longevity. So yeah.
I'm like 2 out of 3 because the whole like dance party thing. One
Yeah.
of my New Year's resolutions was to learn to dance like a video vixen. And so I have been practicing. Thank you. It
I
was a
love that.
random one, but like it really does help. So I've been moving my chi as well as like learning to dance. Okay. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Are we ready to move into our next part of the podcast, which is myth or fact?
Let's do it.
Okay, so if y'all are new listening, Myth or Fact is basically like a speed round. I'm going to ask a couple of questions and you can either answer yes or no, or if you want to, you can give us a little bit more description if you want to.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. So, first question. Western medicine and Chinese medicine don't mix, and traditional medicine is not regulated.
Okay, I'm gonna go with myth, mainly because well, it's not true. But secondly, I kind of feel like I touched base on this a little bit earlier, where I talked
Mhm.
about the integrativeness of the two and also how we are regulated by the American Medical Association. I'm actually gearing up to take my national board exams right now, which are federally mandated in order to practice Chinese medicine here in America. So yeah, very mandated.
And I'm wishing you luck. You got it on the exams. I know you can do it.
Thank you.
Next question. Stress is the root cause of all health issues in Chinese medicine.
Okay, I'm gonna go with like true because stress can mean so many different things. So I feel like fact in the sense that stress can be stress on a certain organ, stress can be something that's like self induced or something that kind of like naturally occurs, whether it's like I don't know, developing a cyst or developing a fibroid. Like those are things that like we may not necessarily know the cause for, but they do happen, and that's a form of stress on your ovaries or it's a form of stress on your body wherever the cyst is. And again, that leads to imbalance, or the opposite. Emotionally, we're stressed, and then that leads to physical ailments, like I touched on earlier.
Your physical health is tied to your spiritual and emotional health.
Very factual. Yes.
Ooh, okay. Can you get a little deeper into that one?
Yeah, okay. I think the easiest way to kind of think about this is like manifestation, where a lot of our emotions chronically can have negative impacts or positive impacts on our body. So, for example, somebody who's had a lot of hardships in their life, somebody who's had a lot of like tribulations that they've had to endure, they could have a really strong constitution and maybe nothing ever happens to them. Or at some point, it manifests into something physical, whether it be something like super superficial, like muscle and back pain, or it could get deeper and it could manifest into something more tragic and like more hard to beat, like, but whether it be like something like a chronic illness or an autoimmune disease. Autoimmune diseases are often caused by like chronic stress on the body, and then our genes are expressed to kind of like bring that into play. Or even looking at like, for example, schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. Sometimes we do have to have certain environmental triggers and certain triggers in our life to finally put those into play in our body, and then we kind of develop, you know, the disorders or the mental health ailments that we have to kind of work through and learn how to manage. So I think that's like one of the easiest ways to kind of think about it from like a Western lens, but even from a Chinese perspective, you know, everything is energy, everything has substance in the body. And so when you think about grief, like I talked about manifesting in the lungs, or anger frustration is kind of a liver type of ailment or manifestation. All of those things kind of lead to different physical symptoms that we experience in Chinese medicine. So all the organs are tied to a specific emotion, and one of the ways that we treat is actually by doing that. And then lastly, I guess to talk about spirituality, I talked a little bit about Shen, which is your mind. If you have a disturbed mind, whether it be because of something that happened like traumatically, or if it's something that you were born with, like all of those things. And I don't mean disturbed in the sense of, I think when I say disturbed, people automatically think, oh my God, you're seeing things. That's not necessarily what I mean. It could literally be insomnia. Like it could be something where you're just having disturbed sleep. All of those are forms of basically conscious disruption, or like disruption in the flow of our consciousness, disruption in the flow of like our natural way of being. And those again can manifest physically like insomnia. Yeah.
Can you run out of chi?
Ooh, okay. So not until you die. Yes.
That's good
So
to know. Okay.
yeah. But that being said, you can deplete your body of chi. So one of the things that we can do in Chinese medicine is help you like tonify your chi, which basically means kind of like boost it, bring it back to life, give it more vitality essentially. So you can run out. You're not going to run to ground zero unless you're like gone, but you can really deplete yourself to a pretty low point. And I think one of the easiest ways to think about what that feels like is like burnout. Like when you have just burnt out, you have no energy for anything. That is essentially a chi deficiency.
Okay. So you need to get your chi up. Okay. Someone should put that on a shirt, actually. Like, get your
Get
chi
your
up.
chi up. I love
That's
that.
good. Okay. Last myth or fact. And this one is about acupuncture. And I will say this one's specifically for me because I bought ear seeds. But ear seeds, I bought them from Goop. And it came as what are those things called? Like a
Like,
rhinestone?
yeah, the little crystal.
Yeah. It's like a rhinestone, or it was like a little dot thing, and you put it
Mhm.
on your ears. Do those work? Did I waste my money?
You did not waste your money. They do
Okay.
work. So, another form of acupuncture and another form of acupressure is auricular. And so, if you look at like your ear, and I'm going to show you my little ear, it's kind of like an upside down baby, I would say, like an upside down fetus.
I
And
didn't realize that.
so,
That's cute.
Yeah, so like basically the points up here are going to correspond to like the lower half of your body, and down here are going to correspond to the upper half of your body, and then in the center is going to be like all of your organs and things. And then there are a couple of points that are sort of like on the exterior and on the back that kind of help regulate endocrine system and sympathetic system, all of that. But no, so basically when you use ear seeds, when you put them on certain points, you're basically stimulating that region to be able to do something for your body. And I think one of my favorite kind of like myth busters for this particular one is the NADA protocol, which is essentially a detoxifying protocol for people who have addiction to different forms of like drugs and things. So it's a protocol that we put different needles in the ear in 5 different spots to basically help your body detox and come off of the drug. And it's actually a proven method of helping people either taper off of their addiction or manage their addiction so that they don't overindulge and end up dying or something like that from it.
Okay, so good purchase on my end then. I've
Absolutely,
done.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
I
then
know I
on
make
top of it, I
good
feel like it's
decisions.
really cute to have like little crystals in your ears. So
Right?
yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was like, wait, this is so cute. And I was like, God, I hope it works. I hope I'm just not like putting like little rhinestones
No,
on my
and
ears
actually
for no reason.
I guess to add on that, like one last part, whenever you have the like ear seeds in your ear, if you just like press on them, they're basically going to stimulate those points. And it's a great way to kind of typically like help you relax or just kind of work on whatever your ear seed is meant to work on. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up the episode, but before we do, where can people follow you, reach out to you, learn more?
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm on Instagram and TikTok primarily, and eventually I will have a website, but I am still in the process of developing that, so TBD. But for now, it's my full name. It's Saher Hussaini Quinn on TikTok and Instagram.
Thank you so much, Saher. I have
Thank
learned
you.
so much from you, and this has been a really great chat. So appreciate all of your knowledge, and I feel like I feel really proud of myself for the things that I have already incorporated from traditional Chinese medicine. But I've learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I will say, like, thank you for having me. This was so much fun. This is my first podcast ever, so I was super excited to do it. And I think, like, as like a little personal note, I feel like it's such a sense of achievement because when you start learning Chinese medicine, it is kind of like a giant slap in the face about what you think you knew. And like learning this entire system of like internal medicine can be very daunting, and I think a lot of people like don't realize how much goes into it. So the program was like 4 years. I think if you'd asked me to do this podcast 4 years ago, I would have literally had none of the insight I have today to talk to you. You would have asked me what chi was, and I would have looked at you like, figure that one out myself. I don't know. So I feel like this was like an accomplishment for me and a learning experience for me too, because I can see how much I do know now, which is really cool.
Yes, and the way that first, so like I feel like there's a quote that says like a smart person can explain things in a very simple way, but I want to say like the way that you explain things, it wasn't difficult to understand at all. Like I was like, "Oh, I get it." So, props to you on that. Like you explained complicated things in a very easy to understand
I
way, which
feel
makes
like
me so happy.
we have to learn to do that because oftentimes you get a lot of people that are like that have never done acupuncture before, so you really have to like build up the muscle of how to explain this to someone who has no understanding of what the heck you're talking about.
Yeah, you did great because I was
Thank
like, what
you.
is that? You know what? It's fine. Let me wrap up this episode and then I can keep fangirling to you. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. With that being said, we hope that you have a good day or a good night and we hope that you are well.